Let me ask you something that most people are too comfortable to think about. If a major storm hit your city tomorrow, if the shelves emptied out like they did in 2020, if you lost your job next week, would your family have enough food, enough supplies, enough of the basics to survive the next 6 months without a single trip to the grocery store? For most households, the honest answer is no. And that's not a character flaw. It's just that nobody ever taught us to think this way. But here's what's interesting. There's a group of people out there who aren't worried about inflation, aren't panicking at shortage headlines, and aren't scrambling when things go sideways. They sleep well at night because they made a series of very simple, very affordable decisions. And today, you're going to learn exactly what those decisions are. In this video, we're covering the 17 most powerful items you can buy in bulk, items that don't just protect your family in an emergency, but are actively saving smart households thousands of dollars every single year, right now in normal times. And we're not just giving you a shopping list. We're going to show you the exact storage system that makes all of this work, the pricing strategy that guarantees you never overpay, and at the end, a mindset shift that completely changes how you think about spending money forever. Stay with us until the end, because the final section alone is worth the entire watch. We're going to show you how to turn your grocery budget into a genuine financial asset. Welcome to Food Decider. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and leave us a like. It genuinely helps us keep creating content designed to protect your family and your wallet. Let's get into it. Here's something your grandparents understood that our generation largely forgot. Before supermarkets were open 24 hours, before same-day delivery existed, before you could order anything you needed with 2 taps on a phone, people stored food. Not because they were paranoid, because they were practical. They understood that the world is unpredictable, and that the families who prepared in calm times were the ones who survived difficult ones. We've lost that instinct, and supply chain disruptions, empty shelves, and inflation spikes are starting to remind us why we needed it in the first place. So let's start at the foundation, the foods that will feed your family for years, sometimes decades, when stored correctly. White rice and pasta are where almost every serious prepper begins, and for good reason. These two staples are calorie-dense, affordable, endlessly versatile, and when stored properly, they last far longer than most people realize. The key phrase there is stored properly, because there's a massive difference between rice sitting in its original grocery store bag and rice that's been transferred into an airtight container with an oxygen absorber inside a sealed Mylar bag. Do it the first way, and you're looking at maybe 2 years before quality degrades. Do it the second way, and properly stored white rice can feed people for literally decades. Some emergency food experts put the shelf life of vacuum-sealed white rice at 25 to 30 years. That's not a typo. You could buy rice today, and it could still nourish your grandchildren. A simple trick that many experienced bulk buyers swear by: add a few dried bay leaves to your containers. Bay leaves are a natural pest deterrent. They won't change the taste of your food, but they will keep insects out of your supply. It's a 2-cent solution to a problem that ruins a lot of people's storage efforts. Buying pasta and rice in bulk during sales can cut your cost by 50 to 70% compared to buying small quantities at regular price. That's not a small number. Across a year of meals, that kind of savings starts to add up to real money. Now, if you really want to level up your grain storage, there's one item most people haven't heard of that absolutely deserves a place in your pantry: wheat berries. Wheat berries are exactly what they sound like. They're the whole wheat kernel, completely unprocessed, before it gets milled into flour. And the reason they're so valuable is that this whole form is dramatically more stable than flour. Flour can go rancid. Wheat berries stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers can last 25 to 30 years while retaining most of their nutritional value. The versatility is remarkable too. You can grind them into fresh flour whenever you need it using a manual or electric grind mill. You can cook them whole like a heartier version of rice. You can even sprout them to produce fresh greens, which becomes incredibly valuable if you're ever in a situation where fresh produce is hard to come by. A manual grind mill is a worthwhile investment if you're serious about long-term preparedness. It gives you the ability to produce your own flour with zero electricity, which is the kind of self-sufficiency that changes everything in an extended emergency. Now, let's talk about protein and fat, 2 macronutrients that a lot of bulk buying beginners overlook because they're so focused on carbohydrates. Dried beans might be the single most underrated item in the entire world of bulk buying. When you compare dried beans to canned beans, the difference in cost and storage efficiency is staggering. A 25-pound bag of dried beans costs a fraction of what you'd pay for the equivalent nutrition in cans, takes up less space, and when stored in Mylar bags or food-grade buckets, can last up to 30 years. Variety matters here too. Rotating between black beans, pinto beans, lentils, chickpeas, and kidney beans keeps your meals interesting and ensures you're getting a broader nutritional profile. Beans are high in protein, high in fiber, and paired with rice, they actually form a complete protein, meaning together they provide all the essential amino acids your body needs.
That's a full, balanced meal from two of the cheapest bulk items on the planet. Cooking oil is the next piece of the puzzle, and this is one area where the wrong choice will cost you. Not every cooking oil is created equal when it comes to long-term storage, and unfortunately, the most commonly purchased oils are the worst ones for preppers. Vegetable oil and canola oil go rancid relatively quickly, often within 1 to 2 years, even when stored well. Once oil goes rancid, it doesn't just taste terrible, it can actually cause inflammation and other health issues when consumed. So stocking up on cheap vegetable oil thinking you're being smart is actually a mistake that could compromise your entire cooking supply. The winner for long-term storage is coconut oil. It has a natural shelf life of up to 5 years, and beyond cooking, it has antimicrobial properties that make it useful for skin care and even minor wound care. Olive oil is a strong second choice. Store it in dark glass containers in a cool, dry place, and it will last well beyond its best buy date. For maximum bulk efficiency, buy both in quantity when they're on sale. Oats round out this foundational food category in a way that's hard to beat on a per-calorie, per-dollar basis. Whole rolled oats or steel-cut oats stored properly can last up to 30 years, and their uses go far beyond breakfast. You can grind oats into flour as a substitute for wheat flour. You can use them to extend ground meat dishes, reducing how much meat you need per meal without sacrificing satisfaction. Some people even use oats topically in bath soaks for skin relief. During the Great Depression, oats were a survival staple for millions of families, and there's a very good reason for that. Now let's talk about two items that don't get nearly the attention they deserve, and yet they may be the most historically important preservation tools ever discovered: salt and vinegar. Salt is one of the oldest food preservation technologies in human history. Before refrigeration existed, salt was how humanity kept food safe. It draws moisture out of food, creating an environment where bacteria cannot survive. Beyond preservation, salt is essential for human life. Your body needs it to maintain proper fluid balance, nerve function, and muscle activity. From a bulk buying perspective, salt is almost embarrassingly affordable. A large supply takes up very little space, lasts indefinitely, there is no expiration date on pure salt, and can serve dozens of functions. Table salt for cooking, canning salt for preservation, and coarse salt for cleaning and other applications. In a prolonged crisis, salt historically has functioned as currency. Ancient Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt. The word salary literally derives from the Latin word for salt. That's how valuable this simple mineral has been throughout human history. Vinegar is the other preservation powerhouse that deserves a permanent home in your bulk storage. White vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and cleaning vinegar each serve different purposes and all deserve a spot in a well-organized supply. White vinegar is exceptional as a cleaner, deodorizer, weed killer, and fabric softener. Apple cider vinegar with the mother, the raw, unfiltered version, has a long history of traditional health uses. During the 1918 influenza pandemic, communities that consumed apple cider vinegar reportedly experienced lower infection rates, though the research here is anecdotal. What's certain is that vinegar is a powerful natural preservative and an extraordinarily versatile household product that costs very little to stockpile. Here's something that surprises most people when they first get serious about bulk buying. The items that end up being most valuable in a real emergency aren't always the ones you'd expect. Yes, food matters enormously, but some of the most critical supplies on any serious prepper's list are things that look completely ordinary sitting in your garage or under your sink. Let's start with one that almost always gets overlooked until someone needs it desperately: contractor-grade trash bags.
Not the thin, flimsy bags from the grocery store, heavy-duty, 55-gallon contractor bags. These things are almost comically versatile in an emergency. A single bag can serve as a makeshift rain poncho. You can use them to cover a broken window temporarily, to collect rainwater, to line sleeping bags for insulation against the cold, to waterproof your belongings, to manage sanitation when plumbing fails, or to create a vapor barrier in a makeshift shelter. A single box of contractor bags is compact, cheap, and solves dozens of problems you cannot fully anticipate in advance. That unpredictability is exactly why they're so valuable. The emergencies that hit hardest are the ones we didn't specifically prepare for, and having a supply of highly adaptable tools is how you handle the unexpected. Washcloths are another item that sound almost too boring to mention until you're in a situation where disposable paper products have vanished from store shelves. Think back to early 2020 and how quickly paper towels and toilet paper disappeared. People were genuinely desperate over items they'd taken for granted their entire lives. A bulk pack of basic washcloths is infinitely reusable, machine washable, more absorbent than paper towels, and useful for cleaning, first aid, personal hygiene, pre-filtering water before it goes through a proper filtration system, and even as emergency fire starters when dry. They take up almost no space, cost very little per unit when bought in bulk, and eliminate an entire category of disposable products from your shopping list. And speaking of items that vanish in a crisis, toilet paper. If you lived through any major shortage in recent years, you already know this.
Toilet paper is a comfort item that people treat as a non-negotiable necessity, which means panic buying empty shelves within hours. Commercial bulk rolls, the kind used in office buildings and restaurants, are longer lasting, cheaper per sheet, and often better quality than the consumer rolls from grocery stores. Keeping a legitimate 6-month supply means that no shortage, no panic, no price gouging affects you in the slightest. You simply stay home and let everyone else fight over the last package. Now let's talk about power, light, and the supplies that keep your household functioning normally when systems around you are failing. Batteries are one of the most straightforward bulk buys on this entire list, and yet most households chronically understock them. AA, AAA, 9-volt, and coin cell batteries cover the vast majority of devices people rely on. Flashlights, radios, remote controls, smoke detectors, medical devices, and countless other items. Buying batteries by the case instead of the small retail packs saves a significant amount per unit, and having a large supply means you're never in the position of searching desperately for a working battery when you need a flashlight during a power outage. Store them in a cool, dry location, not inside devices where they can corrode and damage expensive equipment, and consider choosing lithium batteries over alkaline for your emergency supply. Lithium batteries last significantly longer in storage, sometimes up to 20 years, and perform better in extreme temperatures. Cleaning supplies are the bulk purchase that most people delay because they don't feel exciting, but bleach, dish soap, laundry detergent, and multi-surface cleaners are essential for maintaining health and hygiene, which becomes critically important when medical care is limited or unavailable. Bleach, specifically, is one of the most powerful tools in a prepper's cleaning arsenal. A very small amount of unscented bleach can be used to purify water for drinking in an emergency, something that could genuinely save lives. Beyond water purification, bleach is a hospital-grade disinfectant that kills viruses, bacteria, and mold. Stockpiling a few gallons costs almost nothing. Commercial-grade powdered laundry detergent and dish soap concentrate are ideal for bulk storage. They last indefinitely, take up less space than liquid versions, and cost a fraction of consumer brand pricing when purchased in larger quantities. Keeping a 6-month supply of cleaning essentials means your household maintains hygiene standards regardless of what's happening at the store. Here's where we pivot to some items that might surprise you. Things that seem like luxuries but turn out to be among the most strategically valuable items in any serious bulk supply. Coffee. Specifically, whole coffee beans that are vacuum sealed or stored in airtight containers. Ground coffee begins losing its flavor and potency within weeks of opening. Whole coffee beans, stored properly in a vacuum-sealed environment, can retain quality for years. In a long-term disruption scenario, coffee becomes something far more valuable than a morning routine. It becomes one of the most sought-after barter items imaginable.
Think about it. Coffee is mildly addictive. It's a comfort item. It signals normalcy in abnormal times. People will trade significant resources for it. Having a manual hand grinder alongside your bean supply means you can produce fresh coffee with zero electricity, which is both a personal comfort and a serious barter advantage. Beyond barter, there's a psychological argument for coffee that's easy to underestimate. In prolonged, stressful situations, small comforts have an outsized impact on morale. The ability to make a familiar, comforting cup of coffee when everything else feels uncertain is genuinely meaningful for mental health and family morale. Vitamins and supplements are the sleeper item on this list, the one that most new preppers dismiss and most experienced ones consider essential. Here's the problem with emergency food situations that people don't think about until it's too late. Even if you have enough calories stored, the nutritional profile of a crisis diet is usually poor. You're eating mostly grains, legumes, and canned goods. Fresh vegetables and fruits become scarce. Vitamin C deficiency leads to scurvy, a disease people associate with oldie-timey sailors that is absolutely still a risk in extended nutritional deprivation. Vitamin D deficiency impairs immune function. Iron deficiency causes fatigue and anemia. Warehouse-sized bottles of multivitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc can be purchased for very little money and last years beyond their printed expiration dates. This is one of the cheapest forms of health insurance imaginable. The difference between a body that's nutritionally supported and one that's depleted in terms of energy, immune function, cognitive clarity, and emotional resilience is enormous. Everything we've covered so far, the grains, the beans, the cleaning supplies, the comfort items, none of it reaches its full potential without a system. Because bulk buying without organization is just hoarding, and hoarding leads to waste, confusion, expired supplies, and eventually the exact frustration that causes people to give up on preparedness altogether. So let's talk about the system that makes all of this work. The most effective approach is what experienced preppers call the 3-tier storage strategy, and once you understand it, it becomes completely intuitive. Tier 1 is your working pantry. This is what you use every day, the items you reach for when you're cooking dinner tonight. It's easily accessible, well organized, and actively being used and replenished. Tier 2 is your backup pantry. This is the supply that refills Tier 1.
When you use the last jar of pasta sauce from your working pantry, you pull one from Tier 2 and add a replacement to your next shopping list. This tier ensures you never actually run out of anything because the backup is always there. Tier 3 is your long-term emergency storage. This is the deep reserve, properly sealed, stored in the coolest and driest location available, and rotated into Tier 2 on a scheduled basis. This is what sustains your family through an extended crisis, a job loss, a natural disaster, or anything else that disrupts normal life. The rotation principle that governs this entire system is simple. First in, first out. The oldest items always get used before the newer ones. When you add new supplies to Tier 3, the older supplies move up to Tier 2. When Tier 2 items move to Tier 1, they get used in your normal daily cooking. Nothing sits forgotten, nothing expires unnoticed. Your supply stays fresh, your inventory stays accurate, and nothing gets wasted. The most common failure mode in bulk buying is people who buy a lot of food, store it in their garage, and never rotate it. 2 years later, they discover that their pasta expired, their oil went rancid, and half their supply is unusable. The 3-tier system prevents exactly that outcome by building rotation directly into the structure. Now let's talk about the strategy for buying smart, because there's a meaningful difference between bulk buying intelligently and just buying large quantities of things without a plan. Prices on most grocery and household items follow a cycle. For the majority of products, a significant sale happens roughly every 12 weeks, sometimes more frequently, rarely much less. That means if you can identify when an item is at or near its lowest price in that cycle, you can buy enough to last until the next sale and never pay full price for that item again. The tool that makes this work is almost embarrassingly simple: a spreadsheet. Track the regular price and the sale price for every item you buy in bulk. Over a few months, you'll identify the patterns. You'll know when pasta is cheap, when canned goods cycle through promotions, when cleaning supplies go on sale. Once you have that data, you can make purchasing decisions that lock in savings automatically. Beyond regular grocery stores, serious bulk buyers develop relationships with alternative sources. Restaurant supply stores are one of the best-kept secrets in smart food purchasing. These stores sell the same products in much larger quantities, the number 10 cans that restaurants use, which hold roughly the equivalent of 7 or 8 standard grocery store cans, at prices that reflect commercial buying power rather than consumer retail markup. For meat specifically, one of the most powerful strategies available is buying directly from local ranchers. Purchasing a quarter, a half, or even a whole animal at once and having it processed and vacuum sealed gives you restaurant-quality cuts at farm-direct prices. A deep freezer combined with vacuum-sealed bulk meat purchases can save a family an extraordinary amount of money over the course of a year, while providing better quality protein than most people ever experience from grocery store shopping. Now we need to talk about the part of this conversation that goes beyond shopping strategy, because the real transformation that happens for people who commit to bulk buying isn't just financial, it's psychological. Most of us have been conditioned to think about our purchases as expenditures, money leaving our possession in exchange for things we consume and then need to replace. Under that framing, spending $200 on a large supply of rice, beans, and cleaning products feels like a significant expense. It shows up in the budget as money going out. But here's the reframe that changes everything. That $200 is not an expense, it's a conversion. You converted $200 in cash into $200 worth of physical goods that your household will use. And because food prices increase over time, inflation is not a temporary phenomenon, it is a consistent long-term reality. Those goods will be worth more in 6 months or a year than they are today. You effectively locked in today's prices for future consumption. You beat inflation by converting depreciating currency into appreciating goods. That's not a spending decision, that's an investment decision. And when you start thinking about it that way, bulk buying stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like one of the smartest financial moves available to an ordinary household. Now consider the compound effect across everything we've discussed. Saving 60% on rice, 50% on beans, 40% on cleaning supplies, 30% on pasta, 50% on batteries, these percentages don't stay small when you add them up across a full year of household purchasing. For many families, the total annual savings from strategic bulk buying across these categories runs into the thousands of dollars. That's thousands of dollars that can pay down debt, build an emergency fund, fund retirement contributions, or simply reduce the financial stress that burdens so many households. The savings are real, they're consistent, and they compound year after year. But perhaps the most underappreciated benefit of this entire approach is the protection it provides against the kinds of emergencies that actually happen to most people. Not dramatic apocalyptic scenarios, but the ordinary crises that can feel catastrophic when you're unprepared. Job loss, a sudden medical expense, a family emergency that takes you away from work for weeks, a local natural disaster that disrupts supply chains for days or months. These are the real threats most households face, and a well-stocked, properly organized bulk supply transforms these events. They go from catastrophes to inconveniences.
The financial pressure drops dramatically when your family's basic needs are covered for 6 months without a single grocery run. There is a version of your life where a bad month at work doesn't trigger panic, where a shortage headline doesn't send you rushing to the store, where you watch supply chain news with calm curiosity rather than anxious dread. That version of your life is built one bulk purchase at a time through small, consistent decisions that accumulate into something genuinely powerful. This week, pick 3 items from everything we covered today. Just 3. Research the best current prices in your area. Find your storage solution. Make your first bulk purchase. You don't need to transform your entire household overnight. You just need to take one step, and then another after that. The compound effect of small, consistent actions is exactly what builds real resilience, financial, nutritional, and psychological. Our ancestors knew this. They stored for winter. They bought in bulk at harvest. They built reserves as a natural part of managing a household. We called that wisdom then, and it's still wisdom now. Start small, start smart, start today. If this video gave you something useful, leave us a comment below telling us which item you're starting with first. We'd genuinely love to know. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Food Decider so you never miss content designed to protect your family and your finances. We'll see you in the next one.